That's your warm-up?
Sometimes. Usually my usual warm-up is Hanon. It's an old piano exercise that just sounds like this. And it goes on like that for a while, but that one's more interesting.
That's incredible because, well, guys, welcome to another teaching episode here. We were getting started, and Nick says, well, I just picked up the guitar for the first time, and I have to warm up, and he goes into that. My warm-up is like not even close to that, and I didn't do this to make anybody feel bad about like not being able to do that. I just was so enthralled with what you were playing, and the fact that you're at a higher level, you're able to now just pick up the guitar, and that stuff automatically comes out. I want people to know that eventually happens, right?
Of course, yeah. That is a song called Indifference. It's an old French kind of jazz manouche song. There's been some debate about this amongst my friends. There's two different versions of the song, and to be totally honest, I'm not sure who wrote the one that I play, and everybody's confused when I play it, but I know it's something. So, yeah, good song.
Well, that's pretty incredible. And today, actually, I was trying to hang on a second here. Today, you're going to be I was going to putting your lower third up here, and you're going to be an historian and author, but you're just amazing guitarist. So I get this up. All right, there it is. Sorry about that. So today, we want to answer this question: how do I develop proper hand position? And I noticed in your right hand you're using a pick. Are we using a pick first of all?
I was using the one and only.
One and only. If you haven't been keeping track of this, folks, he's got one pick. And I've had nightmares about this because I'm very worried about the pick.
We can't jinx it, but like I said, I have gone through absurd lengths to maintain this pick.
Okay, so it's 8 years old, right? 8 years old?
7 or 8, something like that. Yeah.
It's a young lad. It's getting to teenagehood soon, tweenhood.
Things are going to start getting complicated. We're going to have to start having some interesting conversations, but for now, it's smooth sailing.
So incredible. I can't even get over it. I will be bringing this up every week. Okay. We're talking about how do I develop proper hand position, and I noticed that you had your right hand, you were using your pick. So, where do you want to start this conversation? Because this is a thing. This is the thing that people need to understand.
Sure. For hand position, I would mostly start with the left hand, actually. So last week we were talking a lot about finger picking, and I could do a whole separate episode on your picking hand, which for me is my right hand. If you're a lefty, it's your left hand. But today I want to talk about the hand that goes on the frets. And first off, just some ground rules. The first rule is that I'm going to say 9 times out of 10. There's always exceptions, but 9 times out of 10, if something's really hurting, it's probably wrong. You're probably doing something a little bit off, and you could probably make yourself more comfortable. There's always going to be, or not always, but at the beginning, like when you're first starting out on guitar, there's going to be some pain in like the fingertips, kind of before you develop calluses, and that's just something you need to power through. But I'm talking about like if you have pain down your arm, like in your forearm, or in your wrist, or in your elbow, or really like anywhere past this knuckle and up. If there's pain there, it's usually an issue in technique. I've played some pieces that are kind of designed to push the limits of what you can do on guitar, and sometimes there will be a chord, like some crazy, like weird voicing that will just kind of hurt, and it's just impossible to like play with good technique. But for our purposes, yeah, if it's hurting, you want to take a second, you want to think about where it's hurting, and give some thoughts like where you can adjust your body so that it is no longer hurting.
Can I jump in for a second with this? So like carpal tunnel, right?
Yeah.
Any type of that pain, that would be more here.
Yeah, wrist and also like down into this kind of forearm area. Especially when I like was like in college and just playing like like practicing a ton of hours a day and playing shows and just and also not really thinking as much about technique. I definitely had some issues, and it's no fun. It's no fun at all. So you want to avoid that to whatever extent you can. And you really want to like take the extra time, even if it feels like it's slowing you down, to like really think about like how you're holding your arm and what your what your body position is actually doing for you.
Right. And there's people out there that I know, because I've heard this 1,000 times. My hands don't move fast enough for people that are perhaps a little older, starting again.
Yeah.
Even for young people, it's my hands don't move fast enough. So, but you don't need to work hard, right? You don't need that much effort to do.
Yeah, you don't need to be working hard. I mean, if your hands aren't moving fast enough, and if you feel like you just like don't have the facility to play things that you want to play, the way to do that is actually just to play slow things for a really long time. It's really not much different than working out. If you're trying to get in shape and you haven't been at the gym either ever or in a really long time, you're not going to go in and walk straight to the free weights and pick up 120-pound weights and just start deadlifting them. That would be ridiculous. You would hurt yourself. You work up to it and you go slowly, and it's always a process. And it takes some patience, but if you're having trouble playing fast, you can like pick like a simple chord progression from a song you like, or you can go more traditional and you can just pick a scale and like spend 5 minutes a day just playing through it pretty slowly, and as you go, it'll start to move forward. You'll start to actually see changes in how your fingers are working.
Okay. This we could probably spend more time on this, but this is just a basic kind of discussion about that.
Like hand position.
Yeah. Well, so left hand position, we're talking about, I guess, fretting, right? We're going to talk about where your fingers are on the frets.
Yeah, I want to talk about just in layman's terms, just like how to hold this whole side of your body, basically. And if you really want to delve into this, I would recommend looking up Alexander technique. If you really want to get deep into like posture and technique and ways to be the most efficient musician you can be. I myself am not licensed to teach Alexander technique, but I can tell you what. Sorry?
Licensed?
Licensed, or I've never had any training in it. I one day I'm working up to it. But
all right,
what I do know is that your fingers are very small and they are not that strong. So this idea of like gripping the neck and like squeezing the life out of it, that is the number one mistake that I see a ton of students making, especially when they're playing new or challenging things. You don't need to be doing that. Okay. Your thumb at the back of the neck is there for balance and to just kind of like keep your hand sitting here. It is not there to squeeze the neck. You really don't. It's just once you like if you're watching this and you want to kind of get a sense of what I'm saying, try squeezing the neck, and you'll feel like tension all down your arm. And you were talking about carpal tunnel earlier. That's how that happens. So what I would recommend instead, I'm gonna shake out my wrist now because I hate that, is start by just like kind of getting a light grip on the neck around the like third or fifth fret, and sit up straight and pretend that there's a string with like a small weight to it tied around your elbow, and really just like feel what it feels like to let your elbow drop down to the ground. Feel it like through your shoulder, and really also try not to like collapse this side of your body so that you're just, putting all this weird pressure on your side. And just like for a minute, just see how that feels. And like you can play with a couple different, positions to figure out what's right for you. Everybody's arms are different lengths, so there's no one right answer. And then the next thing you want to do is think about your wrist. It's pretty common to see students, here, let me scoot up for this, trying to play with their wrist all up like this. And you actually don't have to do that. You want to just kind of like drop your wrist down, same as your elbow, and just keep it really, really relaxed. So, if you're playing a scale, this is a G major scale. So it's just, there's no tension there. Everything's just sort of like hanging down, nice and easy. Yeah. And the second step from that is thinking about your fingers. Like once you kind of dealt with your whole arm, then you move on to the fingers. And the trick there, for me at least, has always been to avoid this trap of wanting to like hold down all your fingers underneath higher ones. So if I'm playing like, you don't need to keep all of these fingers down. What will feel better is actually letting yourself just letting your hand kind of come up almost like a wave or a roll under what you're doing. And that way it accomplishes two things. One, you're not pressing down unnecessarily on all this space. And two, your pinky is your weakest finger. And if you're playing a note here, you're actually letting the weight of your hand kind of come into your pinky, so that the force that's pressing the note down isn't coming just from like squeezing your hand. It's actually just coming from all of this kind of pressure from the actual weight of your hand, which is there whether you're putting in effort or not. So it's saving you a lot of energy, which is great. Because as we said before, you don't need to work that hard. You should work hard with practicing, but you should not work hard with actually playing.
Okay. What about the movement though? So if your fingers are, I think the natural feeling is to move your fingers. Let me grab guitar. The natural feeling is to be here, but to bunch your fingers together after you're done. So you're saying not to keep your fingers on top of the frets as you're moving around, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah. I've seen some people say that so go back a step. I'm a big fan of position playing, of like breaking the neck down into sections to kind of help organize it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But I'm not a fan of this idea of keeping your hand super anchored in that position. So I'll play a scale again two ways to demonstrate. So here's your G major scale. Right now our hand position is from the 2nd fret to the 5th fret. If you were playing it with this sort of anchored feel, it would look like this. To me, that's putting a lot of energy on this forearm here. I'm keeping my fingers very stationary, like nothing's really free flowing or fluid. It's very rigid to me. Whereas, same scale, same hand position. That, I think some people might actually say that I'm wasting energy by like letting my hand move kind of back and forth like this, but that's not actually energy that I'm spending. There's no effort happening there. All that is just the kind of like natural inertia of my hand. Like as I'm going up a string, my hand is almost collapsing into this pinky. And I'm just kind of letting that happen. I'm just not really fighting my own hand. So I would make an argument for that being easier and better for you.
Yeah, it feels more natural. Definitely, you're not going to string as much.
Yeah, and some exercises that I was taught pretty early to kind of like make this feel a little bit more natural is, well, my favorite one is it's kind of like an extended caterpillar exercise. The idea is basically you always start on the first fret with your first finger, and you can either go first finger and middle finger, first finger and ring finger, or first finger and pinky. Let's start out with first finger and third finger just to demonstrate. What you would do, you go 1, and then 3, and you again let your hand kind of fall into this. If it helps, you can actually move your elbow like a little higher than you normally would, just to sort of like exaggerate that motion. Because again, when your elbow moves up, it causes your whole hand to tip that way down on the guitar. So you do that, and then once you're there, you realize your first finger is actually about where your third fret is. So what you do is you replace your third finger with your first finger, and then you pull your elbow back in. So again, we have, and then you keep walking up the neck like that. And you get up like as close as you can to the 12th fret. For this exercise would be the 11th, and then you go back down. And now you're replacing your third finger, you're replacing your first finger with your third finger. And then you do that on every string. And also don't forget to alternate pick. And if you do that with your pinky, go slower going down. Yeah. So really what this exercise is doing is it's reinforcing this idea of thinking about like what angle you're kind of attacking the fret from, and thinking about how your elbow ties into that. And just this idea of that actually being something to lean into and make playing a lot easier in general.
What about where like your fingers hit the strings? Are they hitting on top, on bottom, side, middle?
Where on my fingers?
Yeah.
Sure. So I can dig in a little bit and show you. You really want to be, hopefully you can see this, it's not too pixelated.
That's good.
You really want to be on this sort of like very, like, not, you definitely don't want to hit the nail bed because that will hurt a lot. But right on top, right in like the sort of fleshy part of your finger, throughout all these strings. The only one that's different, I would say, honestly, is my pinky, where, I don't know if you can see this, but the callus is a little bit on the side almost. Like it's still on top of the finger, but it's not, it's a little bit like here, maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to see. That one's hard to see for whatever reason.
Yeah, but from here to here is where the callus is. And that's because usually when I'm playing a note with my pinky, I'm a little bit leaning into it. So this is really the angle that we're dealing with here. Okay. So actually letting my pinky be kind of like flexible and twist inward a little bit. Because again, if you're coming straight on it with the pinky, as opposed to the other fingers, it's adding all this weird tension to your wrist, and your pinky's just never going to be that strong, no matter how many exercises you do with it. And you really don't want to spend too much energy trying to get it there, because your pinky is also the most fragile of all your fingers, and those injuries are really not what you want to be dealing with.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, the theme of being relaxed, the theme is in this too, right? You want any tenseness in your body is going to translate to your hands.
Mm-hmm.
This goes for guitar, really any instrument.
And it's also it's gonna translate to what your music sounds like as well. I actually this is a little bit corny, but I heard this Marvin Gaye quote the other day for the first time, which I just thought was like brilliant. He was talking about how he was Marvin Gaye, by the way, if you don't know, is a famous R&B singer. Who, if you don't know, you should, and you should Google him right now.
Right now.
Stop watching this video and go Google Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, definitely.
It's you'll learn so much more from listening to a Marvin Gaye record than anything I say. But he has this. He was talking about how he spent like a lifetime studying the microphone and how to sing into a microphone, and really what the microphone is. And it wasn't until later in his life that he realized that the key was to just relax and stop singing so loud into the microphone, because it's a microphone. It will project your voice however you set it. So the change for him came when he stopped trying to like belt vocally or trying to like shout into it. He would just step back like a little farther away, and he would just, almost talk into it at the volume that you and I are talking right now. And you can really hear that on those records. Like he just has the most like easygoing sound to him, and like it sounds effortless, and it isn't, but it just feels like that. And that, I think, is what everybody should be striving for, is especially on guitar, when it's not vocal, you don't have that sort of like human quality to it. But what you can do is you can think about everything we're talking about. Think about standing up straight, letting your wrist hang, letting your elbow be super relaxed, making sure that you're giving yourself enough room in the hand, and just play and just try to avoid tension.
Is this all just specifically for individual notes, or is it for chords too?
Definitely for chords too. Yeah, I would love to talk about that. So if we let's take a super simple chord. This is an A minor chord. It's usually one of the first chords that I teach people in lessons. Give you a close up here. So you got your middle finger on the second fret on the G string, which is your note A. First finger here, first fret B string, and then open string on E. So this is your A minor chord, a very small version of it. But the reason that I like talking about this chord when it comes to like hand and arm position is because the problem that a lot of students run into is this, of this last note not really coming out. The reason for that is because this part, this little like middle part of your first finger, is bumping into the E string. And the reason that's happening is probably because your wrist is too high. You're like pulling it in, and as your wrist comes in, it pulls the rest of your fingers down. You can actually, like as an experiment, try fretting that A minor chord, push your wrist down, and you can feel how much more room comes in these fingers right here, and you get this arch. And now try pulling your wrist up, and you can actually feel your fingers being pulled down into the string right below them. So it's the difference if your wrist is up, and as it goes down. And it's the simplest thing. You literally, you give yourself more room to make this sort of like claw style arch in your fingers if you just let your wrist hang down towards the floor. And you shouldn't be like forcing it down. You should really just let your arm relax and keep your fingers here. And then you can get this beautiful chord.
When we're teaching, sometimes the best way, especially when we're using something like Practice Pad, is to show people like this, like via video or any kind of like, any kind of like example, to remind them this is what they're supposed to do during the week. Some of the issues that I find with teaching and having people remember it is having something to rely on. How do I do this again? Because like when you and I are like teaching, it's easy to show. It's easy for the person to be like, this is it. I find that for the majority of students, it's really difficult to remember that moment. something like, again, practice pads, what we use to help people remember that. But what is your advice for people out there to have a trigger, like in that moment where your example just now was perfect for a very, very beginner. They're trying to play a chord. They're getting that kind of
triggers remember, like, oh, it's just my wrist. I need to like lower.
Yeah. How do you get them to remember that?
Ooh, it's hard. It's really hard. Remembering that minutia and just those like little subtle things it's tricky. Honestly, it's an unsexy way to do it, but just repetition. Just do it a lot. And I've never been a person who uses like anagrams or like putting something into a song to remember it. If that works for you, feel free to do it. But for me, yeah, just repetition. Just when you're practicing, take the time to play simple stuff and specifically think about this if you want it to actually stick in your brain. Like, take it out of a song and just be like, okay, I'm gonna play my A minor chord and how's my wrist? Bam, that's better. And look at that, that sounds really good. Another chord where this comes up a lot is your open position D, which is, I'll give you another close up here. And this is usually for beginner students. This is the first like tricky chord because your fingers are very clumped together. It's just like a little bit of a smushed voicing. So we won't go into that too much right now, but it's the same sort of thing where if your wrist is up, your third finger is going to want to either mute that high string or even get you this note, which is not a note that you want in this chord. So again, sounding kind of weird. Oh, how's my wrist? Now it's better. And again, same thing. It gives you all this really like nice room in your fingers to get the sound that you want. So yeah, I would say just practice playing chords by themselves specifically to think about this like wrist stuff that we're talking about. And the more you do that, the more you'll like eventually start to see it translate into actual songs that you're playing.
Excellent. Well, we answered this question: how do I develop proper hand position this week? Nick, thanks for your time today. I'm having fun doing this.
Yeah, that's great.
You're an incredible guitarist, man. It's really fun to listen to you play.
Thank you so much for setting these up. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is fun, and we've got more of these coming. So again, thank you for your time today, and folks, we'll see you again on the other side of this.
Take care. Happy practicing.